Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, as always, ObjectivelyDan, and joining me today in studio, no less, Robert Stanley.
Happy to be here.
Hey, Robert Stanley from the Right to Reason podcast. What is up, dude?
Not much. Just enjoying the good weather.
Yeah.
It's a little warm, but not too bad.
Yeah, so it's good because you're kind of local. Actually, you live kind of close to where I live, and so we were like, hey, let's get you in studio for this one. And
Yeah, this worked out great.
I love the dynamics of having people in studio. Most of the time, people are coming in online and stuff, which is fine. I love having online guests. But in studio, there's a little bit of a different dynamic. I don't know.
It's closer. It's more intimate.
Yeah, it's cool. So, for people who don't
Dan's
know...
been touching my leg this whole time. It's that intimate.
Right? Yeah.
Fantastic.
You gave consent, to be fair. Kind of tell people, what is the Right to Reason podcast of people who haven't heard of you before, who's involved?
So we have lots of callers, lots of folks that your listeners would certainly know. Mm-hmm. Jen Peoples was on. We argued about censorship. We do a lot of debating. Tracy Harris, Matt Dillahunty, former president of ACA, Russell Glasser was on there. But not just atheists. We do a lot of fundamental Christians and flat earthers. We do a little too much flat earth. I actually got an email recently that said if you do any more flat earth, I'm never listening to the Right to Reason again. So.
We haven't had enough.
It's understandable.
We haven't had enough flat earth people on Truth Wanted, honestly. I'd love more calls. Here's a secret you guys don't...
Good move.
Right?
Avoid it when possible.
Oh, well, I mean... Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I haven't experienced it enough yet to make that kind of judgment call. But here's a secret you guys probably don't know. Robert has secretly given me some calls that have gone on to the show before. I'm like, hey, Robert, I know you know some people. You want to call into the show, right? And we might get some of those calls
cool
tonight.
People.
Right?
I mean, it's people that you kind of, at first you say, well, I believe in Bigfoot. And you think, well, you're an idiot. But that's not fair because once you get to talk to these people, and if you can maintain respectful conversation, which is hard to do when it gets political, but yeah, if you can just have a good conversation, you find out a lot of these people are just like us. They're really awesome people, and by the way, we're atheists. They think we're crazy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so if they're able to look at us and be, well, where do you get your morals from? that kind of routine. Then obviously we should be cool enough to look at them without judgment.
I think the same thing. Bigfoot, as laughable as a concept as it is for some people, including myself, right? I don't believe that's a thing, but
you're very tall.
There's some people who would probably mistake me as Bigfoot. That's not, an exaggeration. But there's people out there who do believe in this stuff, who form communities around this stuff, and it's they exist. You have to acknowledge that they are a thing, right? You can't just say these people don't exist because they do, and they want to have conversations about this stuff just as much as I do, I think. I would love it if we got to talk about Bigfoot more in particular. That's something I don't think we've explored enough. There was a guy a few weeks ago who messaged me on Twitter who wanted to call in about the deer man that he's seen in central Alberta, the central Alberta deer man. And I guess it's like Bigfoot, where it's just
But he's part deer, part man. That's part of that whole crypto thing.
Right.
The crypto people are the least offensive ones. They're really cool. They're like country folk.
Yeah.
That's
so interesting to me to come to beliefs like that. Especially I just don't know. I guess you have to have an experience with that sort of thing to really believe that, right? Because I've never had an experience where I thought I saw a flying saucer in the sky or something like that, or I saw Bigfoot in the woods.
My brother and I used to, when we were living in Georgia, we would go out into the woods and there was this train track that would run and we would hop on the train. It was going slow. It's not like we were doing cool 007 stuff. It was extremely slow, but we would hop on it and ride it for a while. And I swore I saw something.
Yeah?
Yeah, and at the time I'm like, well, I probably did, but now obviously I look back at it as a skeptic and go, well, we're pattern-seeking mammals. Of course, I could have seen a shadow, and we've all done that. You wake up in the middle of the night and something in the mirror.
So just to put it on the record, Robert Stanley does not believe in Bigfoot.
Not anymore.
Okay.
No, but by the way, Bigfoot did exist.
What?
I'm going on the record.
Okay.
So, but no, I mean, at one time it was ape. Back in the whole early time, there was a North American ape that existed that looked very man-like.
North American ape?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
For real. Bigfoot was a thing. Now, it's not the Bigfoot that people talk about today. But it was the closest.
Where mankind has seen it.
No, this is way before man.
Well, okay, so my knowledge of physical anthropology,
Australopithecus way back in the
Australopithecus, but that was that didn't occur in North America as far as I know.
This one was.
What? Okay.
Google it. It's crazy.
Okay. Well, now I'm gonna get emails telling me how stupid I am that I don't know about this. But
you're like, well, I need to get more Bigfoot callers, and then you're like, I have a Bigfoot guest. So
that'd be great.
No, I'm not saying he exists. I'm just saying he did.
If I knew somebody in the area that believed in Bigfoot like wholeheartedly and wanted to talk about it, I'd bring him on. Like, I'd have him sit right next to me. I'd love to talk about that. That'd be cool. I don't know.
Yeah, that's play banjo music as your intro.
Oh my god, that'd be so funny. I guess there is a correlation there. I guess I'm used to seeing like the History Channel stuff where you have the documentaries and there's always some guy who lives in like Nowheresville, Kentucky, who has like kind of this experience and stuff. And I guess you can attribute that to a lot of things. I guess you could say that's like lack of education. I guess you could say it's just like an isolated incident.
Yeah, it's never like a professor that believes in Bigfoot.
Yeah,
it's never somebody from academia that has like one of those. Or a 9/11 truther. It's like,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, and it sounds so judgmental to say like, oh, well, this person isn't as educated enough. But really, like, if you don't have like the skepticism or like the knowledge to be skeptical about things,
I think you have to be humble. You have to be, and the smarter you get, the stupider you realize you are.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's that whole.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah. There's like the bell curve of confidence. Where you kind of, if you learn about biology from a decent accredited college, you have a really hard time being a creationist, and that's not to say that creationists are stupid. It's just to say that they're not humble enough to think that maybe they didn't come from a divine source that breathed the breath of life into humanity. Right?
Yeah, creationism, that's a whole... I never grew up as a creationist. I knew people around me that did. And, like, where we live in particular, I think that's a pretty popular belief. I don't know if it's, like, the majority, but, where we grew up, I'm certainly, like, we were surrounded by people who kind of believe that. But, like, it was always, like, they applied skepticism to things. I think people do apply skepticism, but it's kind of in... I don't want to say the wrong way, but it's like, well, okay, if evolution is real, then why are there still monkeys? You know what I mean?
Like they haven't been educated on that topic.
Yeah, well, it's like...
that's just...
Yeah, it's a misunderstanding of terms and
stuff. The weird thing is, some of these creationists are highly intelligent people. They might not be highly educated in topics regarding like biology or anthropology or just basic sociology, or whatever. That might not be their field of interest. They might be a dentist.
Yes.
But lots of times they're very intelligent, but the smarter they get, the more they double down, and that's so bizarre. I mean, the people that attacked 9/11 were they had bachelor's degrees, right? I mean, or attacked us on 9/11.
Yes.
So it's a weird thing that you can't make the criticism that you're uneducated.
No.
But you're certainly not educated in that area because people from those areas, from those facets of academia, don't think those stupid things.
So, yeah, there is this idea that people have that education is kind of this neutral thing. Like, if you were educated on this topic, then you wouldn't believe what you did. But plenty of educated people believe in all sorts of things. I come from a family who, some of them have master's degrees, and, like, they believe in stuff that I wouldn't. I don't know, like that the soul could begin the conception, right? It's like, well, there's just I don't see a reason to have a belief like that, but that's just how it's part of how they're raised. It's part of their cultural understanding. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and it annoys me the most, Robert, and you've probably seen this a lot, where people attribute specifically intelligence to a belief or not, where it's like, if you're intelligent, you have to.
We're very bad about that in the atheist community.
I think so.
Very bad about it. We come off a little smug, and I think we need to rethink that as a community, because it's an easy thing to criticize somebody when they say, "I believe that a talking snake talked to a rib woman and convinced her to pollute all humanity with sin," and you laugh at it, but it's not necessarily that's a dumb person. It's a dumb idea, and we got to respect people, not necessarily their ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, I must say this every freaking week, but I have a show like this because I want to give a place for people to give their ideas and not feel like that they are dumb or like that they just embarrassed to kind of share these things. Because if you talked to me, Robert, a few years ago, you would have been like, what the fuck is this guy saying?
You and me both. Yeah, I was a fundamentalist.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we got to give space for people to kind of explore things on their own, to kind of be like I didn't get to where I'm at in a day. It took a lot of reading. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of
Now,
absorbing
here's the
ideas.
crazy thing.
Yeah.
Are we going to think we're stupid 5 years from now?
Absolutely.
Like
I
our
hope
present
so.
us?
God, I hope so. I hope so. You know?
That's insane. That's insane to think.
Yeah.
It really is.
Because if I'm not, then that kind of just shows I'm not growing as a person. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're not going to figure it out.
I think
You're not going to figure it all out. There's no way to do it.
I could be vegan in a few years. I could be like I could see myself changing on a lot of things in the future.
I don't think I'll be vegan.
Well, you say that now.
I say it now. I would have never thought I'd be an atheist.
Yeah, I never thought so either.
Yeah.
I definitely had that perception of atheists in my mind of they're just nasty people who just had who just,
I didn't even know what it was.
you know what? And that's the thing too.
They don't want
it.
you to know about other religions when you're in that kind of like culty level of Christianity, that sort of thing. They don't like. I remember I was going to Christian school, and they taught us about the Epic of Gilgamesh. And for anybody that's not familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh, it was the story of the flood that existed in the Fertile Crescent just before the Old Testament version of it came out. So obviously, since it predates it, then that lets you know that the whole Jewish story is just copying what came before it. But they taught us about it, but they told us that Satan put it there to trick us, like dinosaur bones. And so they prep you for it. They don't give you all the information. They give you just enough to make you an apologist.
Wow. Okay, so my experience with creationism, I did not grow up with that at all. I had books that talked about dinosaurs being millions of years old. It was like, okay, whatever. I remember the first time one of my earliest memories of encountering it was, I think it was like, I was up late one night or something, and I was a real little kid, and I think it was like the 700 Club was on or something. And somebody was talking about the Leviathan in the book of Job.
Yes.
And someone was saying like, oh, well, this description of the Leviathan kind of matches this dinosaur here. And I remember asking my dad like the next day, like, is this true? And it's like, well, some people kind of believe that, but you know.
Like Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. Like,
and then there was the Japanese vessel that like pulled up some kind of like weird seaweed looking thing in the 70s. And that we actually had that photo in my history book of being like, well, this is evidence for Leviathan from the Old Testament.
What? Oh, that's a new one to
I
me.
think the Book of Job talks about it, and Behemoth.
I don't know about the photos in the 70s. That's a new one.
But yeah, I mean, if you just Google 70s Japanese vessel pulls up Leviathan or something like that, like it's insane that so many people jump on board that it's actually in textbooks that they teach children. People
find evidence to fit what they already
and it was
believe.
it was just rotten. It was just a rotten thing, and it looked like it had like the flappers and the old pictures of dinosaurs that you see like drawn out or what have you. But
wow,
crazy shit.
Well, man, we've already got a full list of calls here. Isn't that awesome? We got people who want to talk to us today. I want to go to Phillip first. Phillip in Savannah, Georgia, because Phillip, I think, wants to talk to us about Bigfoot. What's up, Phillip?
Oh, cool. I'm from Georgia, Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. I think you're our first Bigfoot caller on Truth Wanted. So I'm very happy for you, Phillip. Congratulations. Round of applause.
I don't think Bigfoot's a vegan, if he is.
He probably not, unless he's eating, nuts and berries in the forest, right?
You don't get that big.
I think it would be pretty much like what bears do. Whatever you can get.
Yeah, it's true.
Probably.
So, Phil, do you believe in Bigfoot? Is this what you want to tell us right now? You got the research to back it up?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I have the research to say that more research is justified.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Is what I say.
All right.
But to me, very strong case. I mean, no matter where you start with in terms of physical evidence or, eyewitness. Now, I know eyewitness testimony is obviously can be very sketchy considering people's individual experiences, but we do accept eyewitness testimony in courts of law, too. So you have to take into account all kind of factors, the person giving the testimony mainly.
Okay.
But one of the main things I'll state that on its own is strong evidence, and that's just simply the foot track evidence. Mm-hmm. If it were people going around all day long with wooden cutouts all over the place, so everybody's probably familiar, if they're even remotely familiar with the subject, they remember the footage of the Patterson film from 1967.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's the one where he's like walking through the creek, right?
Yeah, so Patterson himself, after the incident, cast these 14 and a half inch foot tracks in the area. But he only had the presence of mind to cast the most perfect-looking tracks. Later, somebody else did think to go back and take photographs of all the tracks. And all the tracks aren't perfect. There's some tracks where only part of a foot is in the substrate. And it clearly shows flexion. Everybody wants to see that money shot where it's a perfect-looking footprint, and that doesn't. But when that's all you've got, and then this guy comes around and shows you, no, this whole set of tracks had plenty of differentiating looking prints. To me, that's clear evidence you're not dealing with like there was a guy named Ray Wallace who was suspected of doing cutouts, and he probably did. I mean, it's not to discount that lots of hoaxing goes on. Mm-hmm. And surely it does, and probably more so even now since everybody's got a video camera on them. Anyway,
yeah.
Let's see what Robert
jump in real quick, if that's okay?
Yeah, I had a question too.
Yeah.
Well, you go first.
Okay, well, my thing is, Phillip, if you know that there's a lot of hoaxing that goes on, and I'm glad that we agree with that because I definitely think that happens. What is it that kind of drives you to believe in Bigfoot in the first place? Is it just eyewitness testimony?
That's close to what mine was. Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, like
I want to know that.
Footprints and eyewitness testimony. Is that kind of what drives your belief?
Well, it's a combination of things. The very first thing that grabbed me, I mean, I'd have to go back to the very first thing that grabbed me, which was not eyewitness testimony. It was a combination of seeing the Patterson footage, which I don't know how much y'all analyzed the footage, but when you look at this thing walking across past this creek, it's with computer enhancement, you've been able to see this thing. You can see the flexion and contraction in the thigh muscles as it's moving. And this is 1967. But I didn't know all that as a kid. When I was 6 years old, I just saw this thing walking. And I also heard some kind of recordings. This was in a mini documentary before a movie. You know, they used to do these little shorts instead of just trailers before movies. I'm an old dude, you know. They'd have like little cartoons like Mr. Magoo, or they'd have little mini documentaries. And I was 6 years old, and this was a mini documentary. It was the first thing I'd ever heard about it. I was just in awe. So that first grabbed me. But eventually, something happened in Okefenokee Swamp when I was camping there in the 90s, was the next thing that really kind of grabbed me. Mm. So it is a combination of information that I don't have personally, but also personal experience. And then from that point forward, more personal experience.
So we have footage of a guy, or at least a thing, walking across something. You know, why not just, dude in a suit, right?
That's what it looked like to me. Yeah. Honestly, felt like I get that you said whenever you saw it, you thought, legitimate Bigfoot. But
I can't speak to your personal experience.
It looked like a dude clomping around. I mean, he's got like weighted feet. It looks like he's probably got shoulder pads from like football. From football practice.
Yeah,
it looks like a suit, man. Yeah. It's a suit.
If that's a suit, you even have Hollywood special effects dude Bill Munns saying they did not have that technology to do a suit like that in '67. I mean, he's on the record.
I've seen Star Wars. What was that, 70s?
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't that long after that. And that whole bar scene was pretty awesome.
Chewbacca looks like a man in a suit. Okay.
Chewbacca looks like Bigfoot.
Well, it's maybe, who knows? Maybe Steven Spielberg and that gang knew something we didn't know.
Maybe. About evidence in court, if I can just jump back to that.
Yeah.
Part of that, if I can ask you this, Phil, would you recognize that, yes, we do take a witness's testimony as a thing of value in the court of law, right? But if the witness says something just fucking crazy, then it kind of invalidates their testimony. So if I say I saw the red car run into the blue car, so therefore the red car is liable to pay the blue car some money for his damages, that's fine. But if I say I saw Bigfoot driving it, they would laugh me off the stand, just because if you say something.
Well, they would, but that's only because of social condition norms. Like, so we have to define what is crazy. We're talking about
Bigfoot driving a car is crazy.
Well, Bigfoot driving a car does sound crazy, I'll admit. It does. But but the idea of a large humanoid being in the forest doesn't sound as crazy as Bigfoot driving a car, does it?
Well, let me just put out like why I currently don't believe in Bigfoot, right? So like my understanding of physical anthropology, unless Robert is telling me something different, we have no like greater apes that are in the North American or even South American area. All of our evidence of anthropology kind of points us towards that most of these beings kind of started in Africa and then moved out to parts of Asia and Eurasia and, you know, even parts of the Philippines and stuff like that, right? So
Phil, you and I might agree a little bit on this more than Stan here.
So like evolutionarily, right? Like I don't see how Bigfoot would fit into the model. Now, again, there are things that we find all the time that like the opossum, right? Like it's the only marsupial in America. Like that's a thing that just kind of, you know, is kind of weird.
I mean,
the platypus is weird.
Platypus is kind of weird.
Right
so
there is we're constantly, the bigger point to what you just said is we are constantly, whether it's every 50 years, 20 years or whatever, finding things that overturn previously long-held notions.
I agree, yeah. And I think that's a strong point for people who believe in Bigfoot. I think that's because, like, we're constantly finding new stuff. Like, but an animal that large, it seems like we would find more evidence, right? I mean,
I'll be honest with you. The large thing is really tired.
Okay. Well, tell me why that's tired.
I'll give you an anecdotal.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a tale. And I can't give you all the details, but we kept hearing about a large animal in China.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. And we couldn't find it.
Okay.
And then once somebody found it, it took another 60 years to find another one. And this was a large, when I say relatively dumb, it's not that bears are dumb, but compared to possibly a humanoid or kind of subhumanoid creature, a black and white animal that just sits around eating all day and not trying to hide. It took 60 more years to find. That's a panda bear. Now, if you take an animal that has possibly close to human level intelligence and all that intelligence is devoted towards the forest, and it would have to know what kind of threat we pose. See, we pose a threat to a lot of animals in the forest, but those animals aren't smart enough to know it. A white-tailed deer doesn't know that we could wipe out its environment. But something with higher intelligence would know that, and it would be of their extreme interest to constantly keep tabs on what we're doing in the forest and to ultimately have to stay hidden. It would be part of their adaptation. They would have to be masters of their environment.
Okay.
You know, Phil, wouldn't something of higher intelligence change its environment? I mean, that's typically how we interpret animal intelligence. You know, there's a beaver, you see a beaver dam. They removed wolves from a particular region, and it changed the direction of the river.
Something it's not that they don't possibly change the environment. You have these incredible, massive tree structures that aren't even physically capable by a human that are in areas where there's never been any machinery. And that's documented on video now thousands of times over.
It's a tornado.
It's a total mystery.
It's a tornado.
Let me ask you, if a tornado could take a green 80-foot tree, not rotten, pull it out of the ground, and then weave it laterally between trees that are standing, like a sewing job, in between one side, then the other. Or could a tornado put together a teepee shape that's 80 feet high, 70 feet high? I mean, what I'm saying is these tree structures have patterns to them. They have definite patterns.
Okay, so
they have repeated patterns.
That's interesting. So these tree structures and these kinds of things that they have been found, you would consider that evidence towards your belief of there being a Bigfoot?
I will not say it's evidence at this point because nobody's seen a Bigfoot making one, but there clearly is some unknown answer for them.
Okay. So does your belief of Bigfoot, is it limited to like the North American area, or do you think it's in other places, or?
Well, first we just got to get rid of the words belief and disbelief, because I just don't hold to those, because to me it's like
you're
everything
skeptical.
should be on the table.
Okay.
Disbelief is just the other side of the coin of belief. It's a religious disbelief in not accepting something, and oftentimes without availing oneself of all of the evidence. So, and belief is also, there are people that, I've got friends, they believe in Bigfoot. I'm like, well, I'm not there with you. I strongly suspect there's something.
Okay.
So,
but it has to be one or the other, Phil. Do you believe or do you not believe in Bigfoot? This isn't one of those agnostic scenarios. An agnostic would not believe in it.
Well, I don't know that I created the word, but I adhere to the word unbelief. I veer towards the evidence pointing that there is definitely some kind of large, and I won't even say primate because I don't know that, but some kind of large hairy animal that appears humanoid in shape is roaming, and no, probably not just North America.
Okay.
There's evidence of, all around the globe pretty much, as long as the areas where they have an abundance of food and a means of staying relatively well hidden.
Can I ask you, Phillip, why you don't think the scientific community as a whole accepts this idea of an animal being out there? Do you have an explanation for that?
I could throw you a few guesses. One of them is simply scientists, just like everybody else. They're not perfect. They have egos. They also stake their careers on certain theories, and then someone comes along and wants to knock that off. And it's, look, you're going to rock my worldview because let's face facts. If it were proven by somebody outside of the mainstream scientific community that these beings exist, whatever they are, they would have to suddenly rethink everything, just like the discussions about religion, about UFOs. What would acknowledging that an alien intelligence exists do to some of our world's religion? And I don't want to go too deep into that because that's a whole other thing.
But Phillip,
it would shake everybody's...
I know some scientists, and I've met some scientists who are like if they discovered intelligent life tomorrow, like they'd be happy, like they'd be super, some of them go into their careers because they want to prove some of that stuff, right? And I imagine there's got to be people who go into science to prove Bigfoot. Like I guarantee that's at least a few people, right?
Jeff Meldrum.
Yeah. Okay. So
Dr. Jeff Meldrum.
So
Dr.
some people.
Grover Crayon.
Yeah. So I don't know. It seems the evidence for Bigfoot to me
blacklisted by the schools they work at.
Okay, so do you think there was some conspiracy going on then, being blacklisted?
I'm not saying a conspiracy. I'm saying these people don't even. It's not even a conspiracy. They just don't. They think it's foolish, and they won't even. Like Dr. Meldrum has said, he can't even get his colleagues to come down the hall into his room and look at the physical evidence. He can't even get them to do that. They just block it out. It's not part of their paradigm. They don't want to think about it.
The problem with this theory is we all know people that have made claims, whether scientists or just professionals in their field of academia, and their career was destroyed. And then later we find out they were right. That's a real thing. I'm with you 100%, Phil. The problem is that doesn't make sense whenever you get into the peer-reviewed journal world. Whenever you write a paper and it gets submitted to a peer-reviewed journal, at that moment, that's not like going to ruin your career. That might ruin that journal, or that might ruin that paper because everybody starts mocking you and they prove that you're wrong, right? That doesn't necessarily ruin a career. There's a lot of people out there that they're just shooting shit out there like crazy, especially in the political science realm and all the sociology, gender studies. There's lots of stuff like that where they're just they're just throwing stuff out, and they're not necessarily just like Alex Jonesing this like con men where they're just throwing random things out there. No, like they really believe what they think, but they're just constantly producing. They're highly productive people, and that in that moment that they start putting something out there that doesn't get a lot of reception, that article, that paper, maybe that journal has to face some consequences for publishing this, right? But the person's career isn't over unless they perpetually do this sort of thing. Murray's book, The Bell Curve, for example, the guy just keeps pushing the theme that racism, his racist theme, but that race can predict IQ. And it totally got devastated in the academic community, and nobody would give him any mind. Nobody would pay any attention to him because he was making horrible claims. But once he put it in the public sphere, he got a lot of backlash from the public, which is a good thing. Sure. Social justice sometimes works. So in that sense,
and he should have been allowed to do that, and then allowed to let things unfold.
Sure, I'm not for censorship. I'm just saying that within the system of peer review, Bigfoot could have completely come out as something that academia would respect, but it hasn't.
Well, it hasn't, and I go back to the fact that I'm not going to go quite to the point of saying like a collective conspiracy, But I do go back to
a little bit of one.
People not willing to change their
It would
minds.
force people to rewrite everything. They would have to rethink, what are we? What are we? What are we in relation to this? And when you have so much time and money and your career's tied up in it, even the money you're making, not only the money you're putting into it, imagine yourself in that. And then this guy comes along and says, look, we've got foot casts that have dermal ridges in them. They have Jimmy Chilcutt, the top dude in the United States who deals with fingerprints in crime, who has his decisions put people away behind bars or don't. He is on the record with these foot casts saying these are legitimate. In other words, on the bottom of some of these foot casts, you have dermal ridges, the equivalent of your fingerprints. They are not hoaxed.
I don't know.
You've got the top guy in the country on the record saying that has weight to it.
I think it does have weight to it, but professionals, I gotta say, and I hate to say it, but they can't be wrong, right? And we've already said before,
anybody can be wrong.
Well, listen, if we're saying that the scientific community at large is trying to hold the conspiracy, then we're already saying that our top professionals are wrong. Okay, so we're already making that claim that people are wrong about this. I'll tell you this, Philip. The reason why I personally don't believe in Bigfoot is because the evidence that I've seen, and again, I guarantee I have not looked at the literature you have. You have probably done way more research on this than I have. But everything,
you haven't seen the literature.
Everything I've seen, Philip, could be amounted to circumstantial evidence. I don't see anything that couldn't fall under that category. And again, that could be a broad category that describes a lot of different things. But I know that bears exist because I can go see them at the zoo, right? Other animals, we have reports and we can even study populations of animals that we don't even see every day, right? But Bigfoot, it doesn't seem to come up on most people's radar, especially the people who seem to be, in that field every day. And
and once again, my argument for you is this animal's survival depends on it being able to elude you. Okay, it's not a bear. And I do say if it's real, it's way more intelligent than a bear. We're talking about making a Navy SEAL look like a bull in a china shop. And not only are you not availing yourself, like you said, of the literature and information, you have not been in the field the way I have, and you have not experienced the things. I'm telling you now, we're moving to the personal experience stuff. So at that point, what it comes down to is I can tell you what I've seen and experienced, and you can either then make three guesses. You can say I'm crazy. And do you think I'm crazy?
I don't think you're crazy, Philip.
I don't think you're crazy.
Or I'm telling the truth about what I've seen to the best of my ability, or I'm lying. You've got three choices. And you know what? That's 33.33% that Bigfoot exists. Okay, based on
not necessarily.
I'm not sure that statistics quite works that way, but I get your greater point though, right? There's only going to be a limited number of explanations for what's going on, and I appreciate your honesty to at least acknowledge that hey, I could be wrong about this.
Yes, of course I could.
And it's hard for us to say to someone we think that you're wrong about this because that's honestly the conclusion that we come to, but. Hey,
you're a cool guy.
Yeah,
you're clearly a cool guy.
And like I said, it's not that I don't think Bigfoot could ever exist. I don't think that that's the case. But I just don't have enough evidence in my collective understanding of how the world works for Bigfoot to be a thing that exists in my understanding of reality. But that could change, Phil. Maybe send me an email or something, show me some stuff. Maybe we could go over it again in the future sometime. And talk more specifics because there's only so much you can get in a call-in show, right?
Right. Well, sure, but no, it's good to get these shows in, and it's good to get everybody. I'm sorry, I'm probably dominated the conversation, but
no, I've been wanting a Bigfoot caller since the day this show has started, and Philip, you have fulfilled that.
This was a cool one.
This you have popped my Bigfoot cherry, and I am so happy about that. So, yeah.
Bigfoot Cherry is actually a name of a film I saw recently.
Man, Philip. Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Well, Philip. Hey, thanks for calling, man. Yep. And I want to hear from you again in the future. Okay.
You definitely will.
Let's make that happen.
We can talk about other stuff.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
I'd love to hear it, but thanks, man. We'll go ahead and let you go and go on to our next caller. Man, I did it. I talked about Bigfoot.
That was it.
Woo!
Bye. So. Look, take away from that.
There's a lot of,
I felt like he was almost saying he's more intelligent than man. right?
Well,
or he would have to have some kind of supernatural ability or something. Was what I kind of want to ask him.
Supernatural. I think the problem is when you have conversations like this, someone's going to bring in all kinds of evidence that you can't just debunk in one conversation, right? You can't just say like, oh, well, this is wrong because this is wrong because this. And that's the problem that I think people have when they have these conversations. Oftentimes people are talking on Facebook and they're talking to somebody, I don't know, let's say they're against vaccines, right? And they're like, oh, but you haven't seen the research I have. And it's like, oh, I haven't. Or maybe I have, but, you know.
Here's a YouTube link.
Yeah, you know.
That's got all the answers.
And you get caught in the muck and the mire of the details, you know. And that becomes harder to change people's minds.
Well, I thought the best thing, and we both went right to the same spot, is we attacked his initial premise.
Yes.
That having a witness is therefore of high value, and the witness claim has to be factored in. Yeah. It's not just whether or not you have a witness making a claim, but if the claim involves something like Bigfoot. Or it would be the same as someone referencing, the Bible says 500 people saw Jesus Christ come back from the dead.
Yeah.
Well, people coming back from the dead is a pretty outrageous claim.
Yeah.
So, and it's not that 500 people saw it. One guy said 500 people saw it.
Sure.
But even that one guy making that claim, that's a problem.
And that's something, you mentioned this earlier about people seeing Bigfoot, and there's an apologetic that I hear about angels, where like they witnessed angels at the scene of Jesus' resurrection, right in the book of Matthew and some other places. And one of the sources says there was one angel, another source says there is two angels. And the apologetic goes like, well, they're both talking about a similar event, so that must give more credibility.
And one's half a two.
But it's kind of like, well, if
there
one
was
person
one,
says
if there's two.
If one person says they saw one Bigfoot and another person says they saw two Bigfoots, that doesn't make Bigfoot any more real in my mind, right? That's just you know, if anything, it makes the claim less credible. But
and I get the point. Anybody that's kind of conspiratorially leaning, as it were, they hear this and they go, well, how do we ever get anything presented that's a little bit crazy? That's the idea. Crazy stuff should be held down. It's kind of like the same way that our Constitution works or our government works. The stuff that's like really wild ideas really has to be good for us to make a change. That's how these things work within the scientific community, within the legislature, within academia. If you're going to present something wild, you better have your stuff ready, because we're not just going to accept this.
Yeah.
Right? It has to have a lot of evidence.
Yeah, and you know, he's talking about the panda thing. You know, we didn't know that pandas were a thing until we saw a panda, right? Like, yeah, there was evidence of pandas around, but like, it was still just an idea. Like, we could have explained a lot of the stuff that we saw on other explanations, and that's just kind of how it works.
And even if I had told you, Dan, I've seen a panda, and you say, I'm sorry, there's just no evidence for it, but I've really seen it. I mean, and I've got 3 other guys that have seen it. There's 4 people, right? You really should believe in this. The moment for you to accept this is when you have the evidence. The moment that I show you that exact photograph of the panda, or you see one in a zoo, as it were, it's not whenever somebody makes the claim. Yeah. Because claims can contradict. Logically, that makes no sense.
Sure. And I understand that's not, I mean, Phillip he can only bring so much to the table when it's on the comedy show, right? But like, that's a good way of putting it.
I don't want to beat up on Phil.
No,
Phil sounds cool.
That's a good way to put it, though. Like, don't believe it right at the claim, right? The claim shouldn't be what convinces you. If the claim is what's convincing you, then there's something wrong there, right? It should be the stuff supporting the claim. If the claim is what's convincing you, then there's some sort of bias that's happening, right?
The government wanted to fill up an airplane full of American citizens and crash it. And I'm not talking about 9/11, okay? I'm talking about Cuba. Right?
Okay.
The DOD.
Yeah, totally you scared me for a little bit there.
Here we go. No, we're getting in this, all right?
We do have other callers.
Bigfoot did 9/11. No, I'm just making a point. That really happened. You can check it out, right? This is a real thing, okay? But the moment for you to believe it isn't whenever I tell you. Like, if you accepted it right now without checking it, if this is the first time you ever heard that, then you would be a fool. Not saying Phil's a fool. Phil's a cool guy. Yeah. But you would be a fool to believe it just because of what you heard. The moment to believe it is when you have the evidence. And that's something we have the evidence for. But we don't have evidence for Bigfoot.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we got a whole list of callers here. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. I want to go to Jason in Western Pennsylvania. Jason, how's it going?
Hi, how are you doing today?
Doing all right.
Hi, Jason.
Now you called in earlier today looking for our show, and you wanted to prove that life is deliberate, right?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
First, I'd like to start off with the concept of uncertainty,
Okay.
since that's what quantum mechanics and I hear a lot of
Oh boy.
the disbelief in life being deliberate.
Okay.
Starting with, if we're talking about random, which is something that's unpredictable, or what's your definition of random? Let me go with that.
What's my definition of random? Well,
Yes.
I know in computer science, random isn't really random. There's going to be mechanisms that kind of determine the randomness, but they just become so uncalculable to humans that it kind of becomes random. And I'd say that probably works to the same degree to the universe, right? If we had some sort of gigantic calculator that could calculate everything, it seems so far that we could calculate the things that we see. But because we're limited in our capacity to understand patterns and how things work, life seems random. It seems to go beyond kind of nature's control. Although quantum mechanics may actually disprove a lot of that. I'm not an expert in that, but that's kind of my short.
But that is a topic of physics that we fully don't understand yet. So what he's saying is random. Very possibly, it might not even be a thing that exists in reality.
Yeah.
But maybe it does in quantum mechanics, the one area that we really don't get, right? Mm-hmm. Well, not the one area, but one that might explain randomness.
Sure, yeah.
And we don't really understand it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, what I was going off of that then, if we're saying that random might not even be there, because that is exactly what I'm asserting, that there is no random, that it's more our subjective view as human beings that consider things as unpredictable or unknowable. But my thing is, if something is unpredictable and we know it ahead of time, that makes it predictable. If we're asserting that random is an unfixed pattern, that is a pattern of being unfixed.
But how could something be unpredictable that you knew ahead of time? That seems like a contradiction.
No, what I'm stating is that just because we know something, the very fact that we know that something is already unpredictable makes it predictable, renders it that it's at least predictable in the aspect of being unpredictable.
So I'm going to say, like, in the sense that you can know all the total possible outcomes. Maybe. If you're talking about a situation where we don't know the outcomes even what's possible, then I would say that that's totally random. But I guess I see what you're saying in that if we know that, like, let's say there's only two options for something and it's either going to be one or the other, I would still call that random, even though I know the possible outcomes, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Right. But what I'm stating is that it would be you, the individual or the perceiver, that it is saying that it's random. Kind of like how you just started off the conversation with the computer program example. It's the very same thing, only why can't we look at it from our level as human beings? We're the ones asserting that there's such a thing as random. Mm-hmm. We're the ones saying that life is random.
Okay.
How do we actually know that it's not a pattern?
Okay, let's accept that reality is a pattern and that things happen exactly the way that they were going to happen since the Big Bang, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that something's deliberate, because that would imply intent. And for there to be intent, there would have to be consciousness, and you can't prove consciousness of the universe.
I've written a book called Wild, What is Life Definitively? And I would assert that I have pulled together all of the peculiarities in life experience, and can prove that there is an intent. There has to be intent behind it all.
What's your best defense for there being intent and therefore universal consciousness? The best one you got, just to throw it out there.
I wouldn't say I have a best. It's almost like it's a...
Just pick one of the top three.
Well, there being no random would be one of them, since uncertainty is what quantum mechanics, a concept that everyone is beholden to for some reason, is That's its main tenet, is uncertainty. And if I'm stating that there is nothing that's actually random because we cannot prove that other than our own subjective perspective, then objectively everything would be deliberate.
Yeah, but just because we can't prove something doesn't mean it can't be true, right?
Just hold on. If I'm just stating, I just stated that we're the ones that are asserting that there's random. Remove us from the equation. Okay. Life is not random.
Yeah.
If you remove us from the equation, life is not random. That is my point.
Yeah. So, like you're saying, to subjective human beings, life seems random. But if you took humans out of the equation, like life isn't actually random. There seems to be like a physics to the universe, right? I see what you're saying. I think.
Right. There's a pattern. What I'm stating is, if we go with the definition of random being an unfixed pattern, that cannot be an unfixed pattern because we know that it is unfixed, which makes it fixed.
Jason, if I were to tell you that I have an energy that comes from the sun that's inside of me. I have sun energy, right? That sounds kind of cool, and in a way that's true, but I'm using a very kind of sneaky word, right, that can make something synonymous that isn't necessarily synonymous, right? So I do have sun energy, okay? I went to Schlitterbahn recently on a school trip, right? I got more of a tan. I'm usually a very pale person. I'm practically blue in reality. But that doesn't mean that I really have like sun energy in the way that sounds. That sounds like some wooey, supernatural stuff, right? Like I get the power from the sun, right? In the same way, when you say that things are deliberate, don't you kind of mean inevitable? But deliberate sounds cooler. Isn't that maybe what you're doing a little bit? Aren't you kind of trying to make a connection? Aren't you kind of trying to conflate terms a little bit? And that might be intellectually dishonest.
I would agree if that is what I was doing, that would be intellectually dishonest, or if I was playing around with semantics. But I look at life as if I'm walking into a surprise party. It's random to me walking into it, not knowing ahead of time that it's a party that's planned. But to everyone else that is there at the party, it's deliberate.
But the people at the party are thinking agents with consciousness.
Can I finish what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I let you just talk for like 30 seconds.
Fair enough. I did interrupt you. Please continue. My mistake.
Okay. Now, for the person that's walking into the surprise party, and everyone yelling surprise, that is random to them. But to everyone else at the party, or particularly the planner of the party, it is not random. It's not a random experience. So just because that person subjectively that did not know ahead of time is feeling that it is random, I am trying to say that is exactly how our being in the universe is. If you notice, we've been collecting knowledge all this time while we've been surviving. That's not normal if you think about that. That when it comes to all, and why is there such a difference in capability between us and the other animals that we know of in existence? There is a big gap of ability simply based on our mental ability.
Sure. Okay.
You don't find that peculiar?
I mean, why would I have to find that peculiar? Just because we're the only, we're the only ones that are, well, so I would say, again, this is going back to anthropology. It also depends on what you mean by mental ability, because there are animals that have capabilities that I can't do, right?
Bat.
Yeah, like a bat has echolocation and stuff like that.
Bats are cool, Jason.
Yeah, and
are you saying bats aren't cool?
If we look at the
bats don't harness electricity.
Yes, but if we look at the fossil record, right, and if we look at Neanderthal populations, if we look at Australopithecus, even we're talking about other humanoid animals that had at least a comparable mental capability to us that eventually died out. So I guess. To us, it seems like we're the only ones, but only because these other kinds of branches of human beings seem to died out over time.
And to piggyback off of Dan here real quick, Jason, What kind of moron would walk into a surprise party and think that was random? I mean, come on. They all in unison say surprise, and it happens to be my birthday?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. If you're telling me if you're walking into some place, you're not surprised? Everyone yelled, you did not know everyone was...
Well, man, I guess if it's a surprise party, the goal is to make me surprised. And you're right, that would be a deliberate thing. But I wouldn't think it was random.
What is surprise is when something is unpredictable. People feel surprised by something they didn't know what was going to happen. What would be random?
That's not true. People that smoke cigarettes get cancer every day, and they're shocked by it.
Well, that's a tangent, but yeah.
Surprise is not necessarily unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
No,
pregnancy.
What I'm saying is you feel surprised.
Is a good answer to that.
Jesus. Okay.
If something is unpredictable, you're not expecting it. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay, so how could you not feel surprised if something's random?
How can I not feel surprised if something is?
Yes, you just admitted and conceded.
Well, because hold
on, you're cutting me off.
Okay, go on.
You just conceded that if something is predictable, then it is expected. The opposite of expected is what? Is it not surprise?
But if you also remember, I also made a distinction that if we know the total outcomes of something, I know that if I flip a coin, it's going to be heads or tails. It doesn't surprise me if it lands on tails. I'm not going to be like, oh, what? That's crazy. I didn't expect that to
However,
happen. But yeah.
This might be the key to where Jason's going. If it landed on tails 30 times in a row.
Yeah.
You would be surprised.
I would be surprised.
But that wouldn't mean it's deliberate, wouldn't it, Jason?
Ooh.
This is what I am stating.
Okay.
Let's get off.
No. Please answer the question.
That's two options.
Please answer the question, Jason.
What I'm stating is...
No. You're jumping away, buddy. Would it be deliberate?
No, I'm jumping away. I'm using your guy's first example, which was the computer program.
Yeah.
It would be random in one sense, but to the whole program, it is not random.
I'm not sure
that is exactly what I'm stating life is.
I'm not sure the program has a perspective on whether or not it's random, but it's an equation.
But the program isn't random. We agree with you there, so we'll give you that one. Can you give us the coin?
Okay, and this is what and
Jason,
what I'm saying is also
go to the coin, brother.
Come on,
stay on the coin.
Let's.
Okay.
The coin flip with two options. Of course, you wouldn't be random in that situation.
It's not.
But
is it deliberate?
Coin would be deliberate.
Wait, I missed what he said. Say that again one more time, please.
I would be expecting. Hold on. Every time I'm talking, it's like...
I know, but I missed... Robert was talking. I missed what you said. You said something...
Two people fighting here.
Yeah, you said it would be deliberate or it wouldn't be deliberate.
Right. Let me finish now.
Okay.
Because I'm not the guy talking about... there's... what is it? Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I'm speaking normal here.
All right.
I'm speaking a normal, simple concept. So I'm not coming out of left field here. So can I get that back?
Yeah, floor's yours, Jason. Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what I'm saying is the guy flipping a coin expects either heads or tails.
Sure.
That's two things.
Sure.
We're too great in the mind to be surprised by if it flips on tails or even if it flips on tails 30 times in a row. Yeah, it's going to be a little shocking that it did it, but to say deliberate, that's not the point. When it comes to the coin tail flip, that's not, that doesn't have enough choices and possibilities. Okay. What I'm saying is that we live in a space of possibility known as Earth, which is within another space of possibility known as the cosmos. And with each second that goes by, we're all making decisions and choices via choices. And that's how it becomes deliberate. Because what are those options doing there in the first place?
You lost me.
Laws of nature. Why are there laws?
You lost me.
Why are there laws if life's not
How do we know when something is deliberate?
Right.
Let me ask you this, Jason. If I flip a
Something has to
coin,
determine those laws.
if I flip a coin, how do you know when my coin flip is deliberate? How do you know when I'm
You're
making?
cutting me off. Why are you cutting me off? We're going to the laws of nature. I thought you guys were the atheists here. Why are we talking about coin flips if I'm talking about the laws of nature?
I can
Well,
answer
coin
that
flips
question.
exist under the laws of nature. First of all, I don't know what your point is there,
Let's
but
stick to the laws of nature. You're saying how something can't be deliberate, so I'm going right to my argument.
well, I'm asking you how something can be deliberate. I'm not saying nothing could be deliberate.
All right.
How do we
If there's
determine
laws,
when something is deliberate?
Hold on.
That's my question. Yeah.
how do we determine something is deliberate?
Yeah.
Because if something, in order for there to be order, because there's an order to the universe, that is what I'm saying. It is a pattern. So if there's an order to something, something has to determine that order.
Sure,
if
but
the order didn't determine itself.
well, I mean, why not just stop at the laws of nature? Why does it have to be like an intelligent being?
I just said
Yeah.
that if something put it in order, that means it had to be determined by something. So that would make it deliberate.
Oh, okay. I see.
Why would
I
I
don't-
don't. That's simple.
Because I mean, gravity orders things, but I don't think that there's a deliberation behind that, right? I mean, gravity puts things into piles and puts things together, but I don't have to say that there's somebody pushing that together, right? It just seems like it's just kind of happening.
The fact that there's life,
Yeah.
a perceiver, there's this objective thing called space and Earth. Those things are objective. They're not living. But then you have a perceiver, a subject, which would be living things.
Okay.
Something had to make that. Something determined that there would be life. From
Yeah.
chaos,
That's where you lose me. I don't know why.
Right.
Why do you think that?
because we state that life has been increasing chaos ever since the beginning of time. If that is the case, that means the ingredients for life had to already be within the chaos, a part of the chaos.
I don't know that we say that.
Yeah.
There's no way life could have emerged if there wasn't already an order for that to happen.
Well, see,
Is what
that's
I'm
your
saying.
personal skepticism, though. Like, I'm not sure if we agree with that premise.
Can I just ask?
Okay, here
Can I
you
ask
go.
him a question, Jason?
All right.
Let me ask you a question.
Real quickly, and then we do need to wrap up this call. Yeah.
Real quick question, and please answer this, okay? Where does the deliberate action of creation come from, in your opinion? And try to keep it concise if possible. If it's God, just say God.
Where does the deliberation come from?
Why are things orderly, and who or what is making these things deliberate?
I am stating that a consciousness did that. The same thing that you're using to move your body, the same thing you're using to move your mouth right now is what is determined that. Some kind of consciousness is what I am asserting.
Okay, you're going to have to give us evidence for consciousness in the same way
And I am
that the
trying to.
Bigfoot guy's got to give us evidence for Bigfoot. You said you weren't like the
Okay.
Bigfoot guy, but you're pulling the same game he did. You're not
No,
producing evidence.
I'm saying that I wrote a book, and here's my evidence. If there are laws, something had to set them to work the way that they do and produce the effects that they did.
Yeah.
There's an order to it.
I just don't think so.
There's-
I think law is a colloquial term we use to describe the rules that we as human beings decide to live in societies. And I think it's also a term we use to loosely describe the patterns that we see in nature. But just in the same way that people conflate that we make laws as human beings, that there has to be someone who makes laws of nature. But I'm not sure if those two terms are compatible in the same sense.
Well, the pattern of them are. We're talking about a fixed, rigid pattern, which is how we came up to determine laws of nature.
But see,
We noticed that
but see,
there's a
determine laws of nature, right? So like the laws of nature are descriptive, right? They're not prescriptive. That it's something that we as human beings have come up to describe the things around us. No human being has been like, I'm going to say the laws of nature work like this, just as they say, well, we're going to live a society just like this. It's not the same thing. It's two different things.
Okay, let's go back. Let's go back now.
Well, we
Do you know
really are
that-
out of time right now, Jason. But look, I really do appreciate you calling in. And
Of course we are. Of course we are.
Come on.
Jason, we've been talking for like 20 minutes, bro. Come on. I gotta go. I got other callers.
Of course we are. Hey, guess what? That was random to me, deliberate by you.
Well, I am running a show. Yeah, I do have to get to other callers, man.
He got you.
And that's what I'm saying is going on in the universe.
It was a sick burn.
I get you.
Does science have all the answers?
No.
Are there questions that lie beyond science?
Yes.
And what do atheists rely on? Just science, isn't it?
Well, I mean, atheists rely on a lot of
We're
things.
down
We're people too, just like anybody else.
And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can't be all right if you rely just on science, but you admit and concede that there are questions that exist that science cannot answer.
Right, but
So to try to make me sound like the Bigfoot guy when
Jason,
I've come with more evidence than the Bigfoot guy,
I don't
still
think
understand it. Evidence that you couldn't actually refute.
The Bigfoot guy had TPs.
he did have GPs.
You don't have any TPs, Jason.
Jason, here's the thing, right?
Get your act
I don't think I'm any Jason. I don't think I'm any smarter than you. I do not think I am honestly sorry if
life is deliberate in my book, Wild, What is Life Deliberately?
You're just plug-in.
Listen, dude. Listen. Please don't make me drop the call right now. Look, listen, dude. I don't think I'm any smarter than you. I'm glad that you're asking these kinds of questions. I'm glad that you're curious about this stuff, man.
Yeah.
We need more people in society that are curious about these kinds of questions. I don't agree with the conclusions you've come to, right? That's the difference between you and me right now. I have no animosity towards you, Jason. I don't think I'm better than you in any possible way. The only thing I think is that I've come to different conclusions to you, and I have different reasons for it. And that's how I want to end this conversation, because I really don't want you to walk away feeling frustrated that you thought you just got made fun of on a show, because that's not what I'm trying to do here, bro. Like I want you to feel like what the work you put into a book, man. I don't know what it's like to write a book, but I imagine that's pretty hard. I imagine you looked into a lot of stuff. I say good for you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you can share that with us. But look, man, we have reasons to believe what we believe too, right? And yeah, we haven't written books about it, but we've looked into the stuff too, man. And we're happy to have a conversation with you, but we got to keep the attitudes better. All right?
Could we do a debate one day in the future? Could I determine my book
maybe.
and debate with you in the future?
I'm open to it, I guess. I'm not really known for doing debates, but it's something I could get into. Yeah. I mean, you have my email address? You know what that is? I do it at the end of every show. It's truth@atheist-community.org. You can check me out on there. Yeah, we'll see where we go from there. Okay, Jason?
Truth at
atheist-community.org. And I do have to let you go because I do got other callers. But Jason, I do appreciate you calling in, brother.
I appreciate you, gentlemen.
All right.
You have a good night.
You too. Take care.
He was a sweetheart. I mean,
You were getting.
I don't
into
think
it.
he likes me.
No.
He liked you.
Jason is, I believe, has called into the show before.
Oh.
And so
So you guys have history.
it's this idea of.
I felt a thing. I felt a connection between you two.
It's this idea of well, it just has to be deliberate. I can't imagine a world that doesn't make it's not deliberate. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Right. And
I can't think of it any other way. Therefore, it must be true.
Yes, and I sympathize with that, but
I do not.
For everything things happen out of randomness. Patterns emerge from randomness.
I didn't like that
right?
to make his argument.
Yeah.
He had to insult the Bigfoot guy. Like, we were cool until he did that, and then I'm like, why are you picking on Phil?
Well, I don't agree with him that he says that he's
He's like, I'm no Bigfoot guy. Like, what? The Bigfoot guy was way cooler.
So I don't agree with him that he says that he brought evidence, right?
Right.
The fact that we observe patterns in nature, I agree, is mysterious. I think it's intriguing, and it is kind of it does make me wonder, why do things happen the way that they do? But to assume that there is a unique, unified intelligence that is organizing all these events is another claim entirely, right? That goes beyond just the observations we're making of.
That's in addition.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think the observed patterns alone make it. It's like saying, oh, look, we see these kind of weird things happening in the forest. It has to be Bigfoot. Like, that's such a specific claim.
They were quite similar.
It's
when it breaks it right down, they weren't that far apart.
Yeah.
One was cooler, though.
You're biased, so.
I'm a little biased.
Anyway, Jason, I hope you do call back, man. We can continue the conversation from there. I do want to kind of switch things around a little bit. I want to get to Emily in Portland, Oregon, because Emily is kind of an interesting person in that we know each other a little bit. Emily, what's up?
A little bit, yeah. Hi, nice to talk to you again, Dan. I think maybe for the first time, over the phone.
Over the phone, yeah. So this is kind of an interesting story. I met Emily a number of years ago in a Christian Facebook group. And recently I was on a video on Mr. Atheist's channel, and Emily saw me on there, messaged me on Facebook, asked if that was me. I said, yeah, you should call into my show. We should kind of talk about things. So that's what's going on here. So what's up, Emily? How's it been? It's been a few years. I haven't talked to you since high school, right? Yeah.
I know. I was probably about, I think, 16 or 17 when we last talked, maybe, and 22 now. Just graduated, which is fun. Yeah.
Why are you here?
Did I misunderstand this?
Actually, there's some funny stories there, not with Dan, but with some other people in those Facebook groups, but I won't get into that.
Yeah. We were in some pretty weird Facebook.
Was it Christian Mingle?
Weird. No, I never went on there, but.
Anyway, so
yes.
This isn't the first time, but it doesn't happen as like I wish it happened more. I wish more people would be like, hey, I knew you from a past life when you were a Christian, because those of you who don't know, Jenna Hoover, who's the artist of our show, actually found me again on a genetically modified skeptic video, and I got back in touch with her, and I was like, hey, we were used to be friends, and now we're both atheists. That's cool. And now she does the thumbnail art for the show. If you like the thumbnail art, that's Jenna's work. And Emily, you'd be the second person I found kind of through these means. So it's kind of a small world. So how's life been since last time I talked to you?
Oh my gosh, very different. Big roller coaster.
Yeah.
We both come from, I don't know, you're evangelical, is that right? You
kind of a mix. I was part of an evangelical ministry, but my theology really wasn't. It's complicated stuff. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I come from a very strongly, like, in the space, evangelical, I guess, tradition. Like, most of my family is very, very religious, and that's how I grew up, obviously. So from birth, and it wasn't until, I came to a university, and I started, making friends with people who weren't Christians, and saying, oh, these aren't, crazy, awful people. They aren't all aggressive. It's just they have different ideas, and taking a few different classes and hearing, I guess, different ideas about, the way the world worked, and not constantly hearing the same dogma over and over again. But I was like, oh, well, maybe, this isn't all the way I thought it was. Even my freshman year seminar class, my class was taught by the chaplain of the school, interestingly enough. And he did basically comparative religions light. And so I learned a lot about other religions. And, even though he is a Christian, he's a Unitarian, he's like, well, there are some inconsistencies in the Bible. And, because growing up, my family was very literalist about the Bible. Adam and Eve was an actual event that happened, that sort of thing. Noah's flood, my mom still believes, is a literal thing that happened. But eventually, I started really questioning. And it was, I'm sure a lot of people have the same story. Like, it's really hard to go through that and question everything you've ever believed. And it was a really painful process with a lot of crying. And I'm still, to my family, except for like my sister and my cousin, a closeted atheist. They don't know. But, now I am a lot happier than I've ever been. And that's a lot of different things too, contributing to that. But it's, I feel a lot freer. There's a lot less, guilt of you have to live this particular way, which is very freeing, which is really nice. So,
and might I say, Emily, the last time I saw you, you would be the last person I would suspect to become an atheist. I'll be honest. Like you were making the posts. You were talking about how the Lord was working in your life. Like, I remembered that. Like, you were super Christian. Yeah, you were real into it. And I guess I can't say that I am surprised. But Robert's probably encountered this too. It seems to me the people who are most in it are often the ones that come out. On the other side, because they get too deep, and then they kind of learn some things that kind of...
maybe what that is exactly what you have, Emily, is courage. Maybe the people that go the hardest in to whatever religion they're in they have a lot of courage, right? But if you have that same amount of courage with an equal amount of intellectual honesty, you leave it.
And that's what I think it mostly is the intellectual honesty, because I won't, call myself the most courageous person ever, and I won't say that I was the most deep into, the religions I could be. I obviously was steeped in it growing up, so, it was all there. But I definitely did have struggles, growing up, because, for instance, I grew up in a church where people would speak in tongues. Mm-hmm. And my younger sister, who is now also an atheist, she trained herself to do that. But I had a lot of guilt growing up because I could never do that. I could never feel it because I was like, I need this to be authentic without me trying. And there was a lot of doubt there. But no, I know a lot of people from growing up from high school and everything who were still very Christian. And like you were talking about, they're very intelligent people. Mm-hmm. And they're very rational in a lot of ways, and they do a lot of research, but, they do a lot of research to kind of dig in deeper to what they believe and try to back up what they believe. And, I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't really know. I'm okay with that.
So you sound, that's similar to my experience. It was like, wow, the people around me are having this confidence in their beliefs that I don't have. I better do the research to have that same confidence that they do. Yeah. And then when I did the research, I came out with even less confidence than before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how, confident my parents are, and, they get angry. If or my mom at least does, she gets angry because a few years back, and they don't know that I'm an atheist, but I'm sure they suspect, because sophomore year of university, I started dating an atheist. So I'm still in a relationship with, and, she would get angry being like, well, how does he know that there's no God? Has he done the research? And I was like, well, he doesn't think there's enough evidence. And she's like, there's plenty of evidence, but, she can't give me any of the evidence. She's just very confident in what the people around her are saying. And, that's something, I was kind of talking to you, Dan, over Messenger. Just, I don't think that I'm ever going to be able to convince my parents to talk about this because, they've been in it for so many years, and, people can change, but...
Yeah, but Emily, you were in it for so many years too, right?
That's true.
You grew up with it just like they did. Now, you came out of it at a pretty young age. Around the same age I am, probably. Yeah. And so that's gonna affect, statistics have shown that people who are older tend to change their minds about things less, right? Because when you're young, you're kind of learning about more things in the world and stuff, and that's just kind of an unfortunate reality. But, we get people here at the ACA that come in who have figured this stuff out at the age of 40. At the age of 50, and it does happen. Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Emily, if anybody's going to convince their minds about something, I think it's going to be you. And the reason why I say that is because you're not just some atheist on the internet talking. You're their daughter, and they know you. They know what you've been through. They can't make excuses as to, oh, well, maybe she had some sort of bad experience with religion. They know that, as long as you show them, you've done the research, and I found that I think I had that effect on my parents when I was first talking to them about this, because I wasn't just some guy, I was their son. And you've seen the same patterns in the LGBT movement as well, where suddenly you're not talking about some guy you saw on TV, you're not talking about Ellen DeGeneres, you're talking about your niece, your nephew, your brothers, sisters, and the dynamic becomes different. So again, you should come out when you feel ready, or maybe not coming out is the best option, but I think I do want to say, if anybody's going to change their minds, Emily, I think you're in a good place to do it.
Can I ask you a question, Emily? Did you face a certain amount of grief when you lost your faith? Did you feel like it was similar to losing a loved one or a family member in that sense?
Oh, hello, Emily, are you there?
I think we lost her.
Oh, no.
Well, I can at least say that's something I went through. And that's why I was asking, is I lost my best friend, my Lord and Savior. And I lost someone that I could talk to, and that's a hard thing to do.
Sure
and
is.
That's what you got to think whenever you're talking to your parents or you're talking to a loved one or a friend, or even if it's a coworker.
Yeah. We're going to try to get Emily back here. Emily, are you with us? Hello.
Sorry, hi.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
You're back. Yeah, we were just
My call was dropped.
we were just kind of talking about how hard it is to actually lose a belief, and how there's always those accusations for people like, oh, you were never a real Christian, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, man.
Oh, yeah.
No true Scotsman.
And here's
I think.
Emily. If anybody ever says that to you, call me up so I can tell them, yeah, I knew this girl. Okay, she was more Christian than me, if anything, right? Like,
Oh, my God.
and
Actually,
yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like one of my friends that I was best friends with, middle school and high school, we were both very Christian together.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of got the idea that I was losing my faith, and she would talk to me about it. And she's like, I'm really worried about you. And at some point she was like, we all thought we saw Jesus' light in you because you're so nice, but you never really had it because, she doesn't believe that
Oh yeah.
if you give up the faith that you were ever really a true Christian. And she knew me, and that's really hard to hear because I definitely believed it. Like, I didn't know anything else. But
God,
yeah.
that hurts. That hurts me on a personal level, because not only was I told the same thing, Emily, but like, again, I knew you. Like, even if you were just projecting, right, on some level, which I think as Christians sometimes, like, at least I did.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, there was something real there in the sense that you believed in something, for sure. And nobody can take that away from you. As much as people try to gaslight you. So I don't want you to be discouraged, because right now in the coming out process, it's a discouraging time, because people are going to tell you different things, and they're going to say, oh, well, our theology says you were never a real Christian, right? But I knew you. I knew who you were. So don't doubt that about yourself.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I could say, no, I wasn't really. I didn't really believe all that stuff, but I did, and I have to own up to it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
It's definitely helpful now in seeing, different beliefs and being like, well, no, is that rational? Because I believed crazier things than that. So.
Yeah. Well.
At least you can tell yourself that you never actually had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But in the same sense, neither do any of those haters. So.
Yeah. There you go. Well, Emily, I'm just so glad that we got to reconnect like this in this crazy, bizarre world that we live in.
Very small world.
Right?
Yeah.
I definitely want to keep in touch, and I'm just happy that you're here. So
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and maybe I'll call back sometime and tell you guys the fun story of my very evangelical Christian grandmother who has done some very fun things recently.
Evangelical Christian grandmother stories. That should just be a whole segment. I'm sure so many people could contribute to that.
They're the best.
Yeah. Well, Emily, thanks again so much, and we'll keep in touch, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Guys.
See you later.
How crazy was that? Like an old friend? That's pretty cool, calling in.
It's weird, dude. Let me tell you, like, I was inspired to be here because of the people I saw on YouTube. The people who were really active in their being confident in their voices and their experiences and stuff. And that gave legitimacy to my own voice. If I'm doing that with other people, then that's the best I can do, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. She's a good person. And fuck anyone that says otherwise. So.
Yeah, fuck you.
There we go. I hope that I hear from her again. Let's go to our next call, though, huh? Let's go to, I want to go to Parker, also in Portland, Oregon. Parker, what's going on?
Hello?
Hello. You are live. What's up?
Hey. Let's see. So so I've been sort of looking into this interesting topic recently. It was kind of like sort of chimpanzee in intelligence overall. And I was just, seeing how like incredibly intelligent they were, and just sort of doing, well, I guess more so kind of with the other kind of the bonobo ape.
Okay.
Which is, yeah. So I was just saying like how just human they were. Then I was doing research about the concept of like a humanzee, like a human sort of ape hybrid, and then I was just sort of wondering like what like if that were to happen, like what implications would that have like on religion, like in terms of what we think of the soul, or like or how people have like specifically free will or something.
You know, that's interesting because my understanding, again, we're talking about anthropology a lot today. My understanding of anthropology is that that's already happened, that at some point in the course of human history that we did interbreed with other ape species, including specifically Neanderthal, right? That's the thing they always talk about in pop science, right? We have like Neanderthal DNA, stuff like that, you know? So, yeah, I agree. You know, I think it comes down to whether the soul itself actually makes sense as a concept. To me, it just doesn't really make sense. I don't see how we have kind of room for it in our bodies, you know? I also think that, I think anthropology is probably the most atheist science out there, as far as it probably has more atheists than like any other science. Maybe physicists, I don't know. There's probably studies on that actually, but you know, like
well, studying all those cultures,
you
start seeing like themes that kind of work together, and you start going, oh, well, I guess this is just part of humanity to make up these stories.
Yeah, I think the thing is the greater religious community as a whole. I very rarely see acknowledgments of the findings and studies of anthropology. You know, I see physics and stuff with like the Kalam cosmological argument, but I don't see as many people talking about the divergence of, you know, humanity, as it were, unless we're talking about like just evolution arguments in general and just saying that those are bunk. But, you know, we have very specific evidence of specific hominid species and stuff, which is, you know, kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe humans and, you know, apes had, you know, previous ancestors, but a lot of sort of people, I mean, on the creationist side nowadays, they kind of dismiss them, saying, oh, it's all ape or all human, and so I was just imagining, like, if there were to be like a modern sort of human chimp or bonobo hybrid, then it would be like extremely hard to just dismiss it. Like I was like, on one time or a few times on the Atheist Experience, Matt Dillahunty brought up like this one sort of thing where, the case of a split brain patient where one side was an atheist and the other side was a theist.
Yes.
And that kind of, I mean, in and of itself kind of demolishes the concept of soul, but like overall in the religious community, it didn't have a big effect. And I think that was partly because it's not particularly tangible, like in the sense they could say, well, you know, maybe he was faking it or something, or also it's not like something you can see and just look at.
Sure. Like how many split brain patients do you know, right? Like most people probably don't know any, so.
You know, the creepy thing is like those people existed before you split their brain, right? But just one was running the show. And it really kind of terrifying to think like right now we're the one running the show, but how many of us are in there?
Yeah.
Just having to watch,
So,
you know, like in your own little prison.
If you're familiar with Holy Kool-Aid, Thomas Westbrook, I happen to know that he is actually making a video about this right now, and he's going to be releasing it, I think, this week, pretty soon, specifically about like split brain patients and how the soul doesn't work as a concept and stuff. So yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, look forward to that. But yeah, I agree with you, Parker. I think it's a good argument, and I think Thomas realized this too, and that's why he's making this video, that it holds a lot of weight against this idea of the soul if we understand that parts of human anatomy are actually kind of controlling the body more so than what we think as like one unified being. You know, like if you start to split us apart and suddenly, you know, we're still autonomous in some ways, and that kind of negates this idea of one unified soul kind of controlling the whole picture, right?
The other crazy one is aliens. Like if there's, you know, in the same way that you're talking about the soul, or if you had some kind of weird like clone with a chimp or something, but like if there's aliens out there, and not a lot of Christians will say, well, of course there's no aliens. You know, they kind of accept that the universe is pretty enormous. But if they are, like, wouldn't Jesus Christ had to go to their planet and die as well? I mean, how many times is he getting crucified?
You know, if you're Mormon, that wouldn't affect your beliefs that much.
Well, there's the
Right.
Kolob.
Yeah.
The Kolob Jesus.
Yeah. But I don't know, maybe Jesus died for the sins of aliens, too. You know, he's got a big plan.
It'd be nice if he did.
Yeah.
It'd be a dick move to not die for them.
I guess so.
I don't know what they do.
I don't know what they do. But anyway. Yeah, Parker, it's a good point to bring up. I'm glad you got to talk about this with us.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just looking at the clock, or I guess the show's almost over. Let's see. So
we're getting close to it. We do have some other callers. If that's all you wanted to talk about, then that's great. And if you have something else, you know, you can always call next week.
Let's see. Oh, well, there is just one thing. It'll just take a second. This weird story relating to Bigfoot I overheard people talking about in McDonald's one day, but there are these old men. They were talking more about heaven, different dimensions, saying like, oh, they thought that heaven, you know, could just be a different dimension. And he was saying, like, as an example, he was like, oh, I had this friend and he, you know, saw Bigfoot walking on his property one day, took out his gun, shot it, and disappeared in a flash. Like, you know, I think that's a case for different dimensions. Just casually mentioning Bigfoot, like vanishing to a different dimension or something. I just remembered that hearing you guys talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah, I don't know about Bigfoot vanishing to different dimensions. I always, you know, I read about the Mandela effect sometimes. I'm sure you're aware of that. You know, this idea.
That was cool.
You know, at some point in our history, like we shifted to another dimension, and the big evidence people always bring up was like, oh, the Berenstain Bears is actually the Berenstain Bears, right? And there's some people who say, "Oh, I'm from the Berenstain Bears dimension." You know, it's just like it seems. I don't know. Again, it's this idea of just circumstantial evidence, though. And that effect, by the way, was named after when Nelson Mandela died. Supposedly, there are some people who believe that, or at least understood that Nelson Mandela was already dead, and like the 80s or the 90s, or I think is the story. I don't know. And the people
a bunch of them.
Yeah, people have kind of collected this phenomenon of different things, but you know, like.
Or Queens, We Are the Champions.
Yeah,
that one's weird.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know. It's so circumstantial. Like it could so just be added up to people misremembering things, right? I mean,
but we're all misremembering it. That's what's kind of cool.
That is kind of weird.
It's kind of cool. Not that I'm saying there's any credence to the Mandela effect, but it is a cool thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. You know, like I definitely. You know, like, you're not going to convince me that we're from another dimension just because we misremember the Berenstain Bears, right? But, you know, I can see why people would think, like, oh, maybe there's something weird going on, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, well, Parker, that was cool. I'm glad we got to talk about the Mandela effect, because that's something I would love if somebody called about the Mandela effect and we got into something on that. But anyway, I appreciate the call, man, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see you later. Yeah, humans we're just bad at stuff. I think we're just bad at figuring out how reality works, you know?
We're doing better than all the other species we know of.
Are we?
I think so.
I don't know, because you could say a bat knows more about reality in some ways than I do, right?
Yeah. Well, they can see it differently.
Yeah.
But they don't have history.
They don't have history?
There is no bat history.
So us having history class, it makes us the superior species?
That's
is that
pretty much
standard?
There's no such thing as bare history.
There could be.
Like, well, I mean, the only way there could be bare history is if we wrote down their history.
Yeah, so that is kind of like an interesting thing about humans, is that our ability to pass on knowledge outside of immediate life-surviving skills, right? Yeah.
I mean, we can pass on cultural themes. I think, Hector Garcia, Alpha God, and sex, power, and partisanship. He would say that we pass on these themes through evolution and sociologically even, but they don't. As what was that one caller? Jason would say that there's no deliberate sense of trying to hold on to history. Except maybe elephants. They go back to their bones.
I don't know, man.
That's kind of cool.
I don't know about elephants and their history, man.
At least maybe, a generation old. Maybe they have elephant graveyards.
Yeah, maybe passing on culture and knowledge is the secret to success. You know, maybe that's what makes us successful as a species. You know,
culture's not our friend.
Not at the moment, but when is it ever, right? Okay, so we got 2 more calls here we want to get to before the end of tonight's show. So if you're on the calls, go ahead and wait. We want to talk to you. First, I want to get to Alana, excuse me. I have a note here that says it should be pronounced Alana. In New York. Alana, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Going all right. What does he want to talk about today?
Well, it's kind of a complicated subject. It's
okay. We're used to that.
So the LGBT community has like this whole thing about about being in the closet and like coming out of the closet anxiety.
Sure.
And the atheist community also has something kind of similar, and that's what I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I think, LGBT and atheism coming out of the closet comparisons are compatible in many ways. I'm not in the LGBT community myself, so I can't make that definitively, right? But observationally, I can say that, yeah, I think there's a lot of comparisons you can very easily make.
Yet.
Yeah.
You're not there yet. His hand's been on my thigh this whole time.
They're right here. You can see it on camera. That's not true. Right. Anyway. Yeah.
You can't really see much. I'm on the phone. So.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you're a skeptic. Is that what you're saying, Alana? Okay. Well, I have the evidence, so.
I'm a witness.
I got eyewitness testimony right here, and it's me. Anyway.
All right, if you submit sufficient evidence.
That's it. That's all you need. Eyewitness testimony is the final say in any conversation.
Not necessarily. Human memory is very fallible.
Well, that's according to you. But anyway, Alana, so are you having some anxiety right now? Is that why you're calling?
No, I've actually, when I did finally tell my family about my agnosticism, I guess, that was actually after I told them I was gay. Or lesbian is the proper term, I guess.
That's interesting. So how did those two experiences compare?
The atheist one was a hell of a lot scarier, actually.
Really? Why was that?
Well, I kind of already knew my parents were like sorta okay with the idea of gay people, but they still kind of think it's different. I don't know what goes on in their heads. They're adults.
Yeah.
But they're all pretty religious, and then my brother's religious, and my little sister actually yelled at me about how Jesus was everywhere one time when I was telling her about how I was an atheist, and she's like 6, so.
Wow. I can't speak for other parts of the world, but I would say where we live in Texas, Robert, do you agree with me? Do you think it's easier to come out as an atheist than it is to come out as gay?
I don't know. I would say, at least in this generation, people seem to be more open to the LGBTQ community. But I couldn't say. I could say this, though. I know in my family, me coming out as an atheist, a very evangelical family, me coming out as an atheist didn't piss my parents off as much as when my sister came out as a Catholic.
Really?
Because they were Protestant. And I kind of felt like they were like, we can get the atheists back, but the Catholics are the real bad guys.
Yeah, I guess it is contextual,
It's weird.
It's not fair to make direct comparisons like that, right? Like, I don't want to start a game of, my experience was harder than other people's, and like that's definitely not what I'm saying. But like,
Everyone's experience is valid. Your emotions are valid.
Well, so here's what we'll say, Alana. I will agree with what Robert said in that I think our generation, kind of a younger generation in general, is more accepting of the LGBTQ community. Because of, I don't know, there's a lot of reasons why there are more people out in our generation. We see a lot more in our media, more depicted positively than any other generation. I think there's lots of reasons for that, but yeah, the struggle for both is real, and I'm sympathetic to your experience in having to come out, and I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I'm sorry that they didn't respond to it very well. How do they feel about it now?
They're getting used to it, I'm sure. We argue a lot about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But usually I can make it up to them with a nice big cake. Because I like to bake.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
But you said that they responded more negatively to the atheism than to the. You said that you were homosexual.
yes.
That is. That is bizarre.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I
wonder if if they felt like in the same way I was talking about my sister, how they thought, well, we can get the atheists back, but the Catholics too far. I wonder if they felt like, well, your sins of your sexual sins, as it were, we can still fix that. But if you're an atheist, that's rejecting the power of the Holy Spirit, right, or something.
Well, I will say this. I'll let Alana talk, and then I'll give my piece. Yeah.
Actually, no, you can go. You can go first. I lost my thought.
I think so. I think it depends on how you think you come to be an atheist or come to be in the LGBT community, because there are people who believe that being LGBT is a choice, that it's something you kind of choose to be, and there are people who believe that religious conclusions are a choice. I don't particularly think that's the case. I think it's a conclusion that you come to. But I think if you believe that something is a choice, then there's an idea of, you can change someone's mind on that. Whereas if it's a conclusion, right, that you kind of rationally come to through some sort of other means, or maybe it's something tied to your identity, like we kind of have with a modern understanding of the LGBT community, like it's something that was kind of there from birth, then that's something that you don't feel you can change as much,
Yeah. My family kind of talks about this sort of thing a lot. We're kind of a mixed bag of religion. Some of us are just Christians, just Bible readers. Mm-hmm. Some of us are Mormons. Some of us are Catholics. Some of us are other branches of Protestantism, evangelicals. Have you ever heard of New Apostolic?
What was it?
The New Apostolic.
Oh yeah,
A lot of my stepdad's family is in that church.
Yeah,
I'm sure all of it.
My understanding is New Apostolic are pretty liberal on a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're
hip.
They're hip with the they're
hip with the youths.
They're kind of the embodiment of the picture of Donkey Kong saying, "It hurts to be this hip."
They're up to date with the latest memes. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Sorta.
Okay.
But they still have their biases.
Yeah. I'm reminded of that picture I saw a year or two ago of someone trying to do a demonstration, I guess a youth group pastor trying to do a demonstration of the Trinity, and he had a fidget spinner on there with one marked the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit.
And he was vaping.
Right, yeah.
That disturbs me.
Well, I mean, that's the way it goes,
disturbs me on a metaphysical level.
Man, God, that reminds me of all the debates that were had within my Christian community of like, how far can we go with accepting secular culture within to like youth group culture and stuff? Like, how far can we be of
Christian
the world?
Rap is too far.
Is Christian rap too far? Right?
That's
a thing that happens. That's a conversation people have.
You gotta give your rhymes an urban twist.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, I remember when I was kind of getting older in my Christianity, and I was getting into kind of Christian rap. I was I was.
Did you DC talk?
Dude, Lecrae.
Jars of Clay?
Dude, I was into it. Jars of Clay.
Oh my God.
Yes, dude.
Did you ever see the video of the pastor where I quoted it like a second ago. You gotta give rhymes an urban twist, and one of the lines was. That's because Jesus Christ is my.
Yes, that's a thing too. But that's a totally different thing, right? There is an industry of Christian music trying to like be as more hip and stuff, and trying to be like a replacement.
I don't think that one was real though.
Well, yeah, but like the Christian hip hop scene is more like there's literally songs about like you can have fun with your friends and not do any drugs or drink or do anything, just have a good time. Like that's kind of the
message. It all came out of that whole dare kind of theme of no drugs and abstinence only.
Patreon goal. I will rap the lyrics to a Lecrae song if we can get enough on the Patreon. That we'll have to make that happen at some point because I do know.
And I'll be a hype man.
Your boy about to beg your parents for $10.
Your boy's been a Christian quite a few years. Victory in faith, but I failed in my fears. I heard a lot of words that have tickled many ears. I think that's all I can do before YouTube actually copyright strikes this video.
He's being responsible.
We'll stop right there.
That's what that looks like. That was responsibility.
That's responsibility.
Quick, like 1 minute tangent.
1 minute tangent, and then let's go to our next caller.
Yeah, the DARE program was a horrible failure. Don't show kids drugs. You're just gonna give them an odd fascination.
Oh, you know what? I agree with you.
That was an awful idea. That was a really, really awful idea. A lot of people got into collecting and stuff like that because of the briefcases full of those fake drugs.
That's so funny.
I'm serious. It's a thing. There's studies.
I believe you. I believe you.
It was an utter failure.
Oh, man. Well, Alana, thanks for calling in. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us.
Fun call.
Yeah, that was really good. And I can't wait to hear from you again.
And because of that.
See you later. Goodbye.
See you later.
And because of that, we got to hear you rap.
That's true.
That was the best part of the whole show.
Yeah. I could do more, but I'm not going to. Patreon goal. We'll make it happen.
Everyone that donates $5, every $5 donation gets a rap song. Can we commit to that? On air.
Can I commit to that on air right now?
But $10. Would you do it for 10?
Yeah, I'd do it for 10.
Every $10 donation to Truth Wanted. He just admitted to it. Every $10 donation to Truth Wanted, he will do a rap song. Not the full song, but a rap segment.
There's like legal complications to this. I'm not sure.
Just make up your own.
Make up my own rap.
Do a Truth Wanted rap. A lot of words rhyme with wanted.
Okay, well, I've
spotted.
All right. Do I want to commit to this right now?
Squatted.
Let's do it. Okay, fine.
It's the past tense of squat.
Fine. Give $10 on the Patreon. I'll do a rap.
Every time.
That's it.
Every time.
That's my terms and conditions for right now. We'll see if that's subject to change.
Every $10. The first one.
Yeah, they get to choose.
It can't be every week.
Regret that. No, you do not get to choose. No. Well, let's see if anybody actually donates from there, and maybe we'll go from there. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing that.
I'm guessing he will get $10 by the next episode.
I wanted to say something about the DARE program. When I was doing my technical communication concentration in school, I did a some kind of technical report on the DARE program and its effectiveness. I did like a 15-page report. And the conclusions I found were, the DARE program basically like sucks. Like it didn't really do it.
Really?
It helped. There was some studies that kind of showed that it improved relationships between students and police members. That it developed
that's
kind of
cool.
more positive members.
Yeah.
But when it came to actually deterring from drug use and stuff like that, there were many cases where actually there was a negative correlation in that.
Speaking of rap, we had like this hip hop dude come. And it was part of the DARE program, and he came out and he's all like had like the overdone headphone thing.
Yeah.
Like it was more for show than anything. He's all like, everybody get together, like he was like, and they had like a air dome thing full of money, and like the kids would get to go in there if they said they wouldn't do drugs.
Yeah.
They're trying to catch the money. They could never catch it. That was the scam.
That's the scam, right? Yeah.
It's all $1 bills anyway. You might get 3
in
15 minutes of looking like a fool.
For sure. Anyway, we got one more caller here I want to get to. This is Dallas, but Dallas is not in Dallas. He is in Nashville, Tennessee. Dallas, what's going on?
Yo, what's up, guys?
Hey.
Are you on drugs?
Do we need to commit you to the DARE program?
The DARE. During the DARE program, I won. There was some essay contest thing that I won. You win some like little like stuff like Dare Bear mascot thing or whatever. But that's a side tangent. But my reason I'm calling is so I often hear atheists talk a lot about kind of the negative consequences of religion, but I feel like I almost never hear them even have any sort of conversation on the negative consequences of secularism or atheism. So I'd like to know, what do y'all think, or what are some of y'all's thoughts there on the potential negative consequences of increased secularism or atheism in the society?
There are none. It's awesome.
Whoa, hold on. Whoa. That is a great question, Dallas. I have never had anyone ask me that. And I think that there are some things to consider, right? So I was watching Good Omens today with Mark, our producer, and that's the new Neil Gaiman show that's kind of based on like what if the Armageddon happened and it kind of went wrong, right? And it got me thinking of, like there's a lot of cultural cues that come from Christianity. Christianity kind of informs American culture for better or worse. And when you have a common culture that you share with people, there's a value that comes with that, with sharing a common narrative with people. And secularism doesn't necessarily provide you a new narrative to go with after that. Sure. There are philosophies you can adopt, and there are ideas you can examine and explore. But secularism by itself doesn't necessarily come with the same kind of milestones that a culture like Christianity kind of has for yourself, right?
Yeah, it doesn't replace the community factor, and that's what we're facing right now. There's so much division within the atheist community, and it's sad to watch. But I think a part of that is because we don't have a flag to unite under. If we're calling ourselves atheists, if that's the only theme we have, if it's not about humanism, or it's not about separation of church and state, or it's not about inclusiveness of others. If it's just atheism, then all we're doing is joining together about something that we all don't believe in. And I think that's a common flaw there.
Yeah. And on my Twitter, I use the term secular humanism as in my bio because to me, I get a meaning out of that kind of informs my life stance and how I operate the world. Because the common complaint is, well, atheism doesn't inform you on anything. It doesn't tell you what you need to do, what not to do, and stuff like that. My interpretation of humanism kind of gives me some guidelines. And I get a meaning out of that. But, being a humanist is kind of an isolating thing because chances are, most people aren't also humanists, right? They come from another kind of background. Their worldviews are interpreted in other ways. But, the flip side of that coin is Christianity in a Christian society that America has developed has also been influenced by secularism in many, many different ways. There's a lot of policies that come from secularism that Christianity doesn't necessarily espouse. For example, a separation of church and state. There's interpretations that can go either way. Like some say, like render to Caesar what is Caesar's and stuff like that. But the kinds of separations we have, biblically, there are examples of, in the Old Testament especially, that God is being at the center of the government, that you're supposed to listen to God and he's supposed to interpret the rules of the land. And here we don't, our country doesn't espouse that. And it depends on who you talk to, right? There's some people that say this, but really our Constitution kind of provides us a way to say, look, we're human beings who are making our own laws, right? Like we're having that separation here. We're a secular government, right?
Right. You can't have freedom of religion and at the same time have a theocracy.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a contradictory concept. Yeah. You have to run a government by secular laws, and perhaps that's not nice. Perhaps we do lose some culture, but we have to remember culture is the mechanism through which we do something good or bad as humans, right? So in the same sense, we can look at sociology in a lot of the same ways that we look at our biological evolution, where you would say the wing of the bird isn't its flight, right? It's the mechanism through which the bird flies. In the same way that our culture isn't humanity, religion isn't humanity. It's the mechanism that we used when we were stupider than we are now to get progress sociologically, right? So there are a lot of benefits that you can grab from Judeo-Christian Western culture. Turn the other cheek. That's a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
If not follow to the extreme, right? The golden rule, which isn't technically what Jesus said, but at least that's what we got through there, right?
Sure.
Pretty cool concept. I always loved the story of the prostitute. They were all going to stone her. And Jesus said, well, which one of you hasn't sinned? Let him throw the first stone. That's a beautiful concept, right? A lack of judgment. But it was through Jesus or through our culture that we were able to pass that message on. That's not the same as the message, right? So I don't know that we really lose anything other than the mechanism.
That's a very utilitarian outlook on culture, like when I'm thinking of, like, again, I'm talking about this Neil Gaiman show, like the benefit that I get out of that show is the knowledge that I know about Christianity, the knowledge of the history of Christianity and the people's interpretations of that kind of text, that if Christianity was kind of gone tomorrow, that show really wouldn't exist, right? Because it's based off of Christianity. Like, it's based off of a history of the religion in our society and how people have interpreted that. And I'm sure the same goes for Muslim interpretations of society and Hindu interpretations of society that kind of give a relevance to people. I get relevance out of that show because I know about the religion that it's based off. And there's I mean, it's entertaining. There's a value to it to some degree, but, you know.
So can I jump back in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, who's this?
Yeah, don't let us take over
Welcome
this
to
entire
Truth Wanted.
conversation, Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought of
Great
well,
question.
kind of I thought about 7 specific points.
Whoa, that's way more points than either of us have thought of, so that's great.
So I'll just, we probably don't have time to get into all this, but I'll just kind of just go through these general points and y'all can comment on whatever y'all want to.
Perfect.
So my first point was declining birth rates. Polls seem to suggest that atheists have the fewest children of any demographic. Number 2, when people become irreligious, they generally don't lose dogma. They simply trade one dogma for another, which is a problem. 3, decreased rates of happiness. Studies and polls seem to suggest that religious people are more happy than irreligious people. Number 4, decline in social fabric. We kind of hit on that a little bit, but yeah, I think the main problem with that is that when people leave church, that they don't generally have an equivalent to go to in the same kind of communal sense. Number 5, rise in authoritarian government. That's a whole probably hour conversation in and of itself. Number 6, more fatherless households. I think the promotion of the hookup culture is an invention of the secular world, not the religious world. And I think the consequences of that speaks for itself. And then my final point is no uniting source for wisdom. And one curious question I would ask you two is that, what sources would y'all point to as a source for wisdom that provides you personally with wisdom? And I was wondering, there's one answer I won't accept. I won't accept just purely the answer that your life has provided you with all the wisdom you need, because A, that assumes that there aren't people who are wiser than you with experiences you can read about and point to, and B, there are plenty of people who have lived long lives that are complete fools. So
yeah.
I'll throw it back at y'all.
Okay, can I just say, props to being concise and making 7 points ahead of time before the call. Like, if every single call was like this one, this show would be a lot different. I love that.
A lot of time to think about this.
That's so great. God, and you're right. We could dive into every single one of those points.
Can I comment on wisdom?
Comment on that first, because that struck out to me too. Yeah.
So wisdom is a product of experience. It's not the same as knowledge. So you're right. We can reference sources of knowledge through science, but I think that we reference sources of wisdom in the same way that religious people do, through our loved ones, the elderly people in our lives. You kind of take the good and you leave the bad, but they have acquired that wisdom through their experience. But we also have stories. We can gain wisdom from the stories of religious people just like religious people can. The only difference is we don't believe the silly stories, right? But we can still hear the story. So in a way, we have this kind of chameleon-like ability, an advantage, as it were, to learn about Zen Buddhism and take the best from that, the wisdom there. Mindfulness is a very important thing that we can take without all the wacky stuff about Brahma, right? We can learn about the necessity of conflict from Hinduism without having to believe that there's holy cows. We can learn about how we reference turning the other cheek from Christ without believing that God, for some reason, likes the smell of burning flesh or needs a blood sacrifice. Or that women need to stay silent, as the epistles would tell us. So we can grab from a lot of different places, and I'd say that gives us an advantage, but it doesn't necessarily keep us from having wisdom.
Can I jump in here? So you still haven't told me what sources you personally would point to derive wisdom from, or that you think, or even a person.
See, here's the conceit that religious people have. It's like there are people who claim, and not all of them do, they say that the wisdom comes from this one book. And never in human history has a human being like ever lived and all of their wisdom comes from one book. That's just simply
I'm not even claiming.
Yeah.
I'm not even claiming that. I don't think most religious people would claim that actually. That you can only acquire wisdom from the Bible.
Well, there are some people who say wisdom only comes from God. Like that is a thing that people say. But here's what I will say. Like, you know, I work a job where the wisdom from the Bible doesn't tell me anything of how to inform. And I think most people do. Like, we can have multiple sources of things, and we don't have to come with like a list of saying, okay, these are the official sources, right? I think that's
like I'm not asking for official sources.
Okay.
I just find it to be an interesting question to ask atheists, because I think it forces them to think like, okay, like what is wisdom, and who are people that I can think of that aren't just smarter than me? Because I think being smart and being wise are two different things. And in my opinion, I think wisdom is the most important thing for kind of creating a decent society. So I think this is a question, and I'm not saying there even has to be some kind of one singular source of wisdom, but I think it's something people need to think about. And I think it's something that, in my experience in conversations with atheists, it's something that they don't think very much about. So I just challenge them. Yeah.
I would tend to agree with you. I think that we do have a mentality of, well, if it doesn't come from science or something, it's not real or something like that, you know? And that's
right. Yeah. Science and wisdom are two very different things. Both important things, but both very different things.
Yeah. And it happens. And it also, I think this also depends on your assumptions on what you think knowledge is. If whether or not you think knowledge is a subjective construct or whether it actually is an objective thing. I don't think people's knowledge... I think knowledge is contextual. I think my knowledge of the world comes from my understanding of science, comes from my understanding of culture, and to say that like, oh, I have this objective knowledge that you have to follow, like I don't think I could make that argument for myself. So, yeah, what do you think about this?
Plato taught me to consider that everything that I think is real could be something that's inside of a cave, a shadow from a fire. Nietzsche taught me to live life to the fullest, in the sense that maybe if you had to do this exact same life over and over and over, every single cup of coffee that you would have was that same cup of coffee that you had last Thursday, right? And every happy moment you had, every drive to work, every time the ennui of brushing your teeth, you had to experience that again and again and again. What is your life? You should live your life like it has value. Rawls taught us that we can define ethics in a way that doesn't necessarily have to come from a single source, like Dan said. That we can kind of peer through it through the veil of ignorance and find a system that works for everybody. Lightning Hopkins said, don't give a woman everything she wants at one time. Well, we get wisdom from a lot of places, man. And they're all sources that I value.
Yeah, I mean, I think how to vet these sources is a different kind of question. I'm not sure if that's one you were asking, Dallas, but if you were to ask me, I would say it comes from the reliability of claims being made. If somebody's saying that, I don't know, that the sky turns green every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're wrong every single time, I'm going to eventually stop listening to that person make that claim, right? It's like, oh, well, it's just not true, right? Even though they keep saying, well, you don't know for sure until it happens, right? We got to check again. And, you know, and at some point as a human being, I have to kind of give up and say, yeah, you know, it's just not working out. And that's the lifeblood of being human, isn't it? It's making the choice of whether or not to keep going with the thing that you believe, like keep going with what you thought the world worked with, right? And
hope.
Yeah, but I just have general rules, I don't know. But Dallas, this was a great call. I'm really glad that you're asking questions like this. And if you could call again so we could talk about some of those other points.
Really cool question.
I think that would be great.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Anytime.
Dude, thanks so much. We'll hear from you again, all right? See you later.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool guy.
Yeah, I like that, man. He had 7 points.
He had them ready.
He stuck to
it. was
them.
bulleted.
Some of them I agree with. Some of them I'd ask more questions
I didn't like
about.
that authoritarian thing. That's so cliche, I think.
Yeah.
At least authoritarianism.
From the outside perspective, I mean, that would be an observation people could casually make.
It's the typical.
And I understand why.
Stalin, Pol Pot kind of thing, and they throw Hitler in there for some reason. But yeah, it's.
But there's a capacity.
It's an
for
antiquated argument.
But
other than that, I loved them.
Yeah. No, great points in there, and I love callers who come in prepared for that. Again, I have to say that's so refreshing to just be like, here's my thing, exactly what I want to talk about. Like, yes, that is awesome. So props to you for doing that. We do need to wrap things up here, Robert. Where can people find you at?
It's pretty simple to remember. The righttoreason.com.
Righttoreason.com. Anything else you want to plug? iTunes, Patreon? No, nothing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is a patreon.com/right. We're on YouTube.
Get yourself out there.
We're all over there. iTunes, you name it.
Cool.
Stitcher. Hit me up on Twitter at Right to Reason 1. I got a Facebook page called The Right to. I can actually do this all night.
Yeah.
But righttoreason.com's got all the links you might need there.
Cool. Well, yeah, if the case this is your first time watching this show or listening to this show, this is Truth Wanted. We take live calls every week at 7 p.m. Central Time on Fridays. This is available on YouTube. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcasts at. We do have a Patreon, which apparently I might have to honor at some point.
$10. Every $10 patron gets a rap song. A Truth Wanted rap, an original from Dan himself.
Why are you setting the terms of my agreement?
You agreed to this already. That was like 30 minutes ago. I'm just repeating it.
Anyway, you can go to that Patreon. I do appreciate it. You can also contact me at my email address. It's truth@atheist-community.org. I'm also on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. That's where I like to talk to people the most. And we got Facebook groups as well in case you were interested in that. Truth Wanted Facebook and stuff like that. Man, Robert, do you have anything else you got to say before we close things out here?
I changed my mind on Bigfoot.
You're Bigfoot.
I think I changed my mind. I think he's real.
Well, hold on. Somebody call Phillip because we just found it, dude. We got it. We got him, boys. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. All right. That about wraps it up for another episode of Truth Wanted. Thanks again, guys. There's our production crew in the back there helping to make the show. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, they're really awesome. Hey, that's Anthony Magnabosco.
The street epistemologist.
What the heck? I did not know he was here. That's awesome. Well, now we got to talk after the show. Okay, well, that about wraps it up for another episode of Truth Wanted, folks. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.